the Enchantress, aka Honey T, also known as Yin. Yin's a star. Come today because I have a whole lot to say, and I come live. I want you to think about something. Think about a child who is so loving and so giving, and they're at their early stage preschool, and they really want to create something, to make a drawing, to give to their parents because they love and care about them so much. And they sit down and pick the tools and utensils to make this drawing. Then they hand it over to the parent as a gift of their love. And the parent looks at it, and acknowledges that it's something wonderful. Then the parent starts to pick up the utensils that the child used and begins to alter or make comment that the drawing is just not perfect. And that parent begins to choose those tools to correct what they believe is error in this drawing. And then begin to make comments about how it's not just perfect and that it needs improvement. And the parent continues to focus on that more so than the gesture that the child has made. Imagine the effect of doing that. Now I want you to bring you to us as adults. Creation has given us this experience. I don't need to focus on why I think that it is so or the reason for it, but we're here. And creation has afforded us this experience. Now, I believe in this experience. Creation and nature has given us everything we need to navigate it. But there's something about some of us that are just not satisfied with what we've been given. And they spend most of their energy attempting to correct what they believe is error or flaw in what creation has done. So that person takes the seat of creation and begins to critique and to point out the flaws with what creation and nature has given us. How dare you? And somebody might say, well, we do need to make changes. Yeah, changes do need to be made because we have those that have taken the seat that is not theirs. Now, I'm going to describe something to you, and most of you listening may not like it. Okay? And I'm going to take you to the level that I'm wanting to navigate you to. I'm going to take you to a very rudimentary form of our existence. We have everything that we need when we're born. Okay? Let's think about a perfect creation in a child. Let's not think about all the other alternatives because that's extenuating circumstances to the point that I'm getting to. When you're born, everything that you need to accompany you as you navigate and begin to grow, you have it born within you. That's one of the things that nature has done as a gift. You're equipped. Now, like I said, I've given examples of those who have sat in the seat of creation and taken this position to say, no, I want to make changes here, there, and everywhere. And those changes have affected us adversely. And one thing I could say, creation and nature are consistent and have not changed. yet we're forever attempting to change what it has to do. And that has become root of our issue in this whole existence. And it has created a plethora of issues that allow those who have taken the seat of creation to go in and fabricate these scenarios and these associations and these agendas and these systems to help support their craziness. And now we've gotten to this point, and nature and creation has been consistent. And now we're dealing with the backfire of all of this. You following me? And I sit back and I have a suggestion for a video. Sometimes I don't even look at the title. I click in, listen to a few seconds of conversation, scroll through the comments, and I've navigated front, forward, as many angles as I can in those quick seconds to assess what's going on. And it's typically the same thing on almost everything that I click on YouTube, no matter what the title is. Talking about some issue that the world is now facing, and most of the people in the comment section are petrified, tired, disgusted, broken, hopeless. That's not what nature and creation created us for. So, with that being said, what happens now? Now, this is the part that people don't want to hear because they're already hopeless, disgusted, angry, fearful, all those things that I named prior. And they're just emotionally too fragile to take what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's necessary. Nature doesn't care about your feelings in reference to these things because they're beings who didn't appreciate what nature gave us and afforded us, and they wanted to alter things. So nature's not moved by your emotions. Now, what nature and creation is going to do, because of its fixed nature, earthy nature, unmovable nature, purposeful nature, insatiable nature, it's going to go ahead and separate the wheat from the tare, the strong from the weak, because it's necessary. And that is what people don't want to hear. And I'm not saying that, there's no hope. Creation and nature always gives us hope. We just have to be wise enough to see the doorway or the passageway or the road to that hope. And it's very difficult when your emotions have been masturbated the way that they have, for you to come outside of your feelings to sometimes see those gateways, paths, or options. So what's going to begin to happen is there's going to be divisions that just happen naturally. And there's nothing anyone can do about it because now we're beyond the eruption, beyond the climax. And once the climax happens, everything else falls into its natural state. Okay? And things are either created or terminated. There's no way around it. So, I give this story of when I was a small child, and very peculiar. Now that I think about it, precocious, however you want to term it, and I had this way with animals, okay? And we live in the housing projects, one of the first housing projects erected in the city that I was born in the 60s. And so there would be stray animals, and they would take a liking to me. and I would feed them and care for them at times. And sometimes these animals would allow me and would summon me to come to wherever they prepared their place to deliver their children. So I've understood birth on that level at an early age. So one day, one of my neighbors who had a German Shepherd and her dog had taken a liking to me, and she said it was peculiar because the dog didn't really do that. And the dog was going to have a puppy, so she alerted my parents that if I wanted to come and watch and it was okay with them, that, I could. And the dog was under the house, secluded. And when I got there, I kind of peeked in, and she wanted to see me, but she wasn't the usual self wagging her tail. She looked at me with a seriousness that I had never seen her eyes before. So I knew the situation was serious, but she allowed me in anyway. So I got in just enough to get close to see what was going on, and she began to have labor pains, and the first puppy came out, and it was so cute. She was licking it and cleaning it, and it was a beautiful experience. So we got to like the third puppy, fourth puppy, and by this time now, I was like, okay, now I see how this all transpires, because I was about 7, 8 years old. And then the next puppy came out, and her demeanor started to change, and I remember she growled a little bit, and at first I was like, okay, is she tired of me? Does she want me to leave? But it wasn't toward me, it was toward the puppy. And that sparked my curiosity. So she kind of took the puppy, and she didn't want me to see it, and she turned her back to me, and all I could hear was her crunching. And I didn't know what that crunching sound was, but it kind of sounded similar to when, you know, I would eat chicken and chew like on the bone or the cartilage before I spit it out. I know it sounds gross, but that's what I could think of. And I tried to get a closer look, and she turned around and her eyes were all black. I'll never forget. Her eyes never looked like that before. And she looked at me as if to say, stay out of this. And she went back to what she was doing, and I looked down and she was eating the puppy. Now, I have to say, I was shocked by that behavior. And I stayed a little while longer, and then I left. And I remember on my way home, I was thinking to myself as a child, why would she do that to her baby? And I wasn't hurt. I was just curious. I was like, what made her do that? And I went home and I asked my mom, and she didn't quite give me the answer that satisfied my curiosity. And my dad kind of skirted upon it, but I don't know, he was hurried to do something else. So, although we lived in the housing projects, there was a parochial school that was nearby, and my parents decided that was the school that me and my sister would go to. And we went there for 7 years, 7 and 8 years. So we would have a weekly pilgrimage to the library, and we would walk from my school, go to the library, and then on the way back home, we stop by McDonald's and then eat and go back to school. And this was the ritual once a week. And so when I would go to the library, the first time that we went, we had first through 12th grade, and so we had various ages on this walk, and we would get to the library, and my age category, first, second grade, third grade, would go to this area in the library that was termed the kids corner. And I didn't like the idea of being isolated to that particular area of the library because it was so small. And this was a huge, beautiful library. And I just didn't like the idea that I was secluded to that small little section. And furthermore, I didn't like the books in the section. So I asked the nun, could I go to other parts of the library? Was I allowed to? And she was like, sure. She's like, but why would you want to do that? She said, here's the fun corner right here. And I told her I wasn't interested in that. 7, 8 years old. So I ran upstairs and I grabbed an encyclopedia and I began to search why dogs would eat their pups. And I can only remember me asking, could I go to other areas of the library, and me finding books, and everything else in between. What I did and where I turned is a blur. But I do remember that I found out. I picked up the book, and I was, smart enough to figure out which book to pick up, and I found out why, based on the book, that the dog ate her pup. And that impressed me. So at that age, I learned that there's nature that is very fluffy and beautiful and makes you feel certain ways and with animals, but then nature also has its course. And that ability and that power and that strength I reverenced. And I have to say, at that age, it did cause me to be very concerned because I knew that nature had this ability to create these safeguards in nature that wasn't always something that I would like. And I had to respect that and understand that. So watching this dog that I had petted for, so many months, and we played, to see her give birth and then eat her pup, I have to say it was borderline traumatic. And so, having said all that, nature and creation is going to take its course now that everything in this earth that man has chosen to do that goes against nature has climaxed and is now over. Nature is either going to allow things to be created or terminated. Now, because nature and creation are super intelligent aspects of this existence, they're going to allow what is going to create the best scenario outcome for the future. So just like that pup, everybody's not going to be saved. And I think that's the part that people have the most difficulty with, because people don't understand, even though we face it over and over and over and over, that there's a timestamp on your experience here. Those people that sit in those seats that have taken the position of wanting to take the position of the creation and of nature have conditioned and programmed you to look at your timestamp expiration as something to be mortified of. They create these rituals attributed to death that inflicts fear of the unknown, and not reverence of the now, not respect of the now when it comes to nature and creation. What it does is it creates these movies, even the way that the Western world deals with death and what it does with the body and the way it parades it and the way it showcases it. It petrifies the young. It further traumatizes the more mature. And then it makes the most elderly fearful. And that's just an improper way to program masses of people. It creates this huge energy that is always being fed because everything has an expiration stamp. That this engine attached to these things or always being fed everybody's time someone time expires. So always knowing that it's gonna happen feeds the engine. Actually having it happen feeds the engine. And then that's not enough that these people who sit in these seats of being godlike to make these decisions get to fabricate and instigate death to feed the engine. So we have an engine that is just not very conducive to what nature and creation has, conjured up for us. So what's going to happen is you're going to start to see the results of creation or termination. So when you have people who commit suicide because you're not dealing with what is actually going on, the way that it's going on, and you bought into the romanticism of life and what life is and what death is, so-called death, that when someone commits suicide, rather than you seeing it as nature allowing it to be a termination process and just to get attached with your emotions, and you begin to romanticize the whole process, and you feed the engine more. So what's going to happen is, because the climax is over with all this foolishness, nature and creation are going to do what they're going to do. And so those that sit in the seat that believe and have the God complex and not satisfied with what nature and creation has afforded us are going to start to suffer, because they're no longer going to be able to do what it is that they've done. The things that they've purported, or the things that they've erected in contrary fashion to what nature and creation naturally want to happen, then those things are going to start to crumble. So you're going to see more of their idols begin to shake and rumble and quake and fall, and it's going to be strange to your eyes. And if you are an idol worshiper, then you're already gathered and you're not going to be allowed to create. The only thing that's going to be allowed to create is that which is lined up with what nature has purposed. And that doesn't mean if your hair is just natural or you're just eating of the earth and you want, no, it's more than that. Even the whole nature, driven vegan, whole alkaline thing is contrary to nature. Yes, it is, and I don't really want to get into that. So, what we're faced with, and we're going to be faced with in the days to come, is nature deciding, just like on that day when that dog had the first pup, the second pup, the third pup, when that one pup came, and that dog was so in tune with creation and nature that it knew, even though it carried that puppy, and that puppy was able to be born, that sometimes nature allows that for whatever reason, but naturally it is decided that that puppy shouldn't make it. And that is a principle that is set with all levels of existence. So when you have a situation where nature has decided that because I've created a form of life and it's not a good enough product, that I'm superior to nature because my feelings attached to this child is more important than what is best for creation and nature, that I feed into my emotions and say, no, I want this baby to live no matter what. And so what happens is there are industries termed medical that, because they sit in these seats with these complexes, that they feed your emotions so that your emotions can feed their engine, and they do whatever it takes. Have you ever, let me ask this question, have you seen a scenario where a person is pregnant and the doctors want to save the baby, but the baby, obviously has a lot of issues, and then they want to do whatever they can to save the child, and when the child is born, is barely hanging on to life, and they spend all this energy, time, and money to keep this child living artificially. But then you have another situation where a person is pregnant, and before the baby's born, the doctors decided that the child won't survive and you won't live a good life, that the is suggested to be terminated, and the person says no, and then child's born, and it's you know nothing what they said. But anywho, so we're at a point where you're gonna either create or you're going to be terminated, and that's what I came to speak of today.